Alrighty, welcome to episode 21 of Outside the Letterbox. This is Joe, and I'm here with Nick
Hey
today.
everyone.
And Paul is not with us this week, but we are going to be talking about the usual, what we watch, movie news, that kind of stuff. And we're talking about our movie of the week, which is Gone Girl, episode 21. Maybe sometime we'll post episode 19. Nick and I actually recorded an episode a few weeks back that we haven't posted yet, like a fall preview episode. So maybe we'll post that after fall is over. See what you guys think of that. So.
Yeah, so people can know what they should have seen after they've seen everything.
Exactly. Spring will come around and it'll be like, so guys, here's our predictions for fall, and people will be like, what the hell?
But then it'll actually work out. It'll actually work out perfectly because if we post it in spring, all those movies that we'll have been talking about in theaters in fall will be coming out on DVD and Redbox in the spring.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it would actually benefit us to wait just like a super long time instead of like just being a little late. You got to be really late, and then you actually come back around and you're relevant again.
Oh my gosh, we should actually use it as like a prediction thing, like saying like, let's see how we were predicting it. Maybe we could do like a documentary for that podcast. Like, can you do podcast documentaries for podcasts where we're like listening to us talk over each other? That's a
I
terrible.
mean, you would have to like splice stuff in.
It would confuse the hell out of people. They'd be like hear us talking over each other, and they wouldn't be able to tell like what's the commentary and what's
A
the actual.
commentary of a commentary.
So that's a great idea. We should do that. I think everybody would love it. It's a terrible idea. Alrighty. So as for what we watched this week, I believe you're going to be talking about David Fincher movie. I wrote Fincher in your thing as a joke, so I misread it. It's David Fincher movies. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, that's pretty much. I rewatched like 90%
Okay.
of
Okay.
the
So
movies
I'm
he's
getting at
done.
that. What I'm getting at is that I'll go first because yours is more applicable to our movie of the day, Gone Girl.
Yes, very much so.
So shut up and let me talk. Anyway, so I watched. I actually didn't watch a whole lot this past week. I've been watching a TV show, Death Note, which isn't a movie, so whatever. But I've been really getting sucked into that. I've been really busy at work. So I'm going to talk about a couple movies that I've seen in the past few weeks, I guess. Well, one of them's been out for a while now. I guess I'll talk about that one first. I watched a while ago, As Above, So Below. I haven't talked about. Have I talked about this already on the podcast? I don't think I have.
Um, I don't know if you did. I know we've talked about it, but you
Yeah.
can. Or was that someone else? I feel like I've talked about this movie with other people.
I talked
So
about
maybe
it.
not you. I don't
I
know.
talked about it. I know with like a lot of people before, just because I love found footage,
Well,
and so I tend to do that. Anyway,
just
I don't care because I'll
talk
talk
about it again.
about it again if you guys have already heard me talk about it once before. Um, As Above, So Below. It's a found footage movie. It came out, gosh, like what, a month ago, something like
Like a
that.
like a month ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm sure you guys already know if you listen to the podcast, if you've read some of my articles, I love kind of terrible B movies. I love found footage movies. Every once in a while I find a good one, not very frequently though. Um, this one I thought turned out to be one of the better found footage movies though. I mean, like for instance, when I think of a good found footage movie, I really like stuff like I liked Apollo 18. I wasn't terribly crazy about Chronicle, although I enjoyed it, I guess. I just think found footage works best when you really exploit it for what it is, and if you really know what the rules of certain found footage movies are. You know, the picking off the person one by one. It gives you a lot more freedom to play around with the rules and throw people's expectations on their heads. As Above, So Below is interesting because it works as kind of like a found footage horror version of Indiana Jones meets Dante's Inferno, essentially, is what it is. And it takes place beneath Paris, where there's all these catacombs, and these characters are searching for the Philosopher's Stone, which I'm sure people have heard about, various incarnations of it. Whether it's like Harry Potter, I think, has something like that. It's the name of a book, so I'm presuming it is.
I really
Um,
like. I I would love it if this were just like somehow like a weird prequel sequel where they're like going through the tunnel and then Harry Potter and Indiana Jones show up because I remember when I was growing up, there was a that was one of like the first Indiana Jones spin-off books. It was about the Philosopher's Stone, I think.
Oh my gosh. Well, that would be amazing because at one point, I'm like basically they go underground into these catacombs and they find out the catacombs are the entrance to hell. With all the stuff from like Dante's Inferno and that kind of stuff, and they have to face their own fears from the past of wrongs they've done and that kind of stuff. But there's a character that shows up where it's like they go down into the catacombs initially, and he's like, oh yeah, I go down here all the time. I give people tours of this area, but you don't go into that door because bad things happen to people who go in that door. He's like, I have a friend. He used to live down here in these catacombs, but he never went through that door. And then one day he did, and he disappeared, and we never saw him again. And then they go through the door eventually. It's a horror movie. And they find his friend, but his friend is like I don't know, it's implied that he's dead or a ghost, or I don't even know. He's just really freaky. So it'd be funny if they found like Indiana Jones in there with like Short Round. And it's like, I don't know where the hell we are, Short Round, and get out of here. Oh my gosh, they need to bring Short Round back if they make another Indiana Jones movie. Like grown up.
I love Short Round, but
grown up Short Round driving like a big rig, and he still has like the boxes under his feet to hit the gas pedal. So anyway, back to I really enjoyed it as Above So Below as a found footage movie. It works as well as just kind of a horror movie in general. Nothing really special to write home about, but if you enjoy that kind of stuff, you might have a lot of fun in this one, despite what everyone else says.
Nice. Yeah, I heard surprisingly good things about it. Like I'm not a huge found footage fan, and apparently when I am a huge found footage fan, it's the kind that you don't care for. Paranormal Activity. So.
Oh my gosh, those movies just okay. We need to have like a whole podcast later on, like this month, in October, just to talk about how much I hate the Paranormal Activity movies. Those whatever.
You can have a podcast monologue where it's just you venting about.
It's like
Paranormal Activity.
We should have a documentary, or not a documentary, a commentary reel that we can play over the movies of just me talking about how much I hate those movies. And
I would actually watch that.
Oh, I'm sure you would. I wouldn't, because I have to watch the movies again. I should be like cooking bacon during it. Get the smell to go through the movie or something.
That's what. Wait, was that you?
That was me. Yeah.
That was you the first time. Yeah. So when we were in college together, and it's funny that you remind me of that because for the longest time, whenever I thought Paranormal Activity, I always thought of bacon. It was because one night.
And now you know why.
Marathoning the movies, and you just decide to cook bacon while we were watching that movie, and so Paranormal Activity is forever the baking movie.
It was just like it was the best too because there was like a big group of us watching the movie. And I just kind of like halfway through because I'd seen the movie before. I just got up and just started cooking bacon in the dark, and like the smell was going through. Then everyone in the room was like, "Damn you, Joe! Now I need bacon." So, yeah. Next we should make that a.
It's good bacon though.
We should make that a tradition. Everyone who watches Paranormal Activity next time, make just a huge like a huge pot with bacon and just eat it while you're watching the movie. The movies will be so much better, I guarantee it.
No, that's what we should do for if we ever do another video series on this site. We should do like we talk about movies while we cook breakfast specifically.
Bacon and movies, or baking movies.
Bacon and movies.
Baked movies.
Now we have to do it. We came up with that title. We have to do it now.
All right, make it happen. I'll eat the food. Another movie that I watched this past week, more recently, was it's a Walk Among the Tombstones, the Liam Neeson revenge movie of the day this week, I guess. And I went into this one kind of without any expectations. The trailer looked interesting enough, and I thought I'd have fun with it. But I ended up really loving this movie. So if you like Walk Among the Tombstones, watch it again, or watch it. I think I did actually talk about this one again because I'm talking about it. I'm like, this sounds familiar. I think I talked about this one before. So I think
you talked about it last week.
Well, I'll talk about it every week because people need to watch this movie because it's pretty awesome. So,
this happened the last time you guys saw a Liam Neeson movie. Remember, like I think when we started the podcast, we talked about nonstop for like the first 3 or 4 podcasts. Like it just somehow always found its way in.
Well, again, it's a Liam Neeson movie. You need to talk about Liam Neeson movies. So instead of talking more about Walking Among the Tombstones like I already did, I'll talk about the Taken 3 trailer.
Well, let's wait. Let's wait until we actually get to the trailer, our little topics there.
Alrighty. I'll open the floor. You go ahead. Go ahead, Nick. What have you seen this
Okay.
past week that we haven't talked about
So by the time you're listening to this, you'll probably see I'll have a ranking of David Fincher's films on the site, and kind of to prep for that, I wound up going through most of his films. The only films of his I didn't watch, interestingly enough, were the three that are at the bottom of my list, which were Benjamin Button, Dragon Tattoo, and then Alien 3. Just because, like, I looked at all the movies I would have to watch and was like, you know what? I'm pretty confident in my opinion of these. I really don't want to rewatch them again. And it was funny. It was funny looking at those movies, or I should say, not looking at those movies as opposed to looking at the ones I did, because Fincher, you know, we'll get into this later, but he's such an interesting director. But I feel like at the same time, like, the conversation around him is very narrow. Like, people always focus on the same things. Like, people always, for some reason, make a big deal of the fact that he does like 100 takes or 50 takes or whatever. And I always feel like that's the wrong thing that we're looking at. Like, I feel like people always look on the surface level of his movies, or kind of like his work as a director. And it was kind of the thing that we noticed in that Every Frame a Painting video that came out, where it didn't focus on, you know, his big show-offy directing style, but it showed about, like, how he directs dialogue sequences. And I think that's something that people kind of undervalue in his movies. And I think his worst movies are actually the ones that kind of go too far, either like dark, or go like too much in his style, or it's too much style over actual substance. His best movies always have great substance, and his weaker films are always the one where the style wins out. Like Dragon Tattoo, and again, we'll get into this with Gone Girl, but like Dragon Tattoo is a movie that looks really good, but like I'm pretty sure I enjoyed that movie when I saw it in the theaters the first time, but like ever since then, like its value to me has just gone down and down in terms of like wanting to rewatch it and like what I got out of it, as opposed to like, oh, that was a cool shot or whatever. And then you contrast that with a movie like The Social Network, which is a movie I completely underestimated. I saw it when it first came in the theaters, hadn't seen it since this past week. And that's a movie where like so much could have gone wrong, and yet because that movie's actually about something, it's way better than it has any right to be. So I always think it's interesting to look at Fincher's films, and you can really tell when it's a good Fincher movie, because he's usually having fun doing it. Like, you can almost see him laughing behind the camera. And for me, like those bottom three, like Benjamin Button, Dragon Tattoo, and Alien 3, like, it just doesn't feel like he was having any fun making those movies. And of course, we know Alien 3 was a really terrible experience for him. But yeah, so it was kind of interesting just to watch all his movies and kind of notice that from each movie, like, oh, you could really tell he was putting his heart and soul into this movie. As opposed to then you have a movie in the middle like Panic Room, which is a fine movie, but his whole goal with making Panic Room was he just wanted to make a Friday night date movie. And that's exactly what that movie delivers, and nothing really more, except that it's a Fincher movie, so obviously it's already head and shoulders above what everyone else, every other, Friday night date movie. But I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting when you watch all his movies together, and kind of how the kind of things that we project onto him kind of like fall away, or you kind of you finally get to notice like actual things about his style, as opposed to just the same things that get reiterated over and over again.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I have a theory about Fincher, especially after seeing Gone Girl, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But that's kind of like his a lot of his earlier movies, and again, I exclude Alien 3. I don't even really consider Alien 3 a David Fincher movie, honestly, because there was so much interference from the screenwriters and the studio and everything with that one. But if you look at a lot of his earlier or mid movies, Panic Room, you got Fight Club, all the movies made around that time. Even Seven, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
He knows where to point the camera. And if you haven't seen that Every Frame a Video, or Every Frame a Painting video, check it out. I posted on the site a couple days ago. It's
we'll link it.
Yeah. It's really worth checking out because it goes into just how much attention to details he puts into his shots and how locked down he loves to be and the reasons for that. But a lot of his earlier movies, like the ones I just mentioned before, he really goes kind of crazy with the style, and they're absolutely they're like a thrill ride to watch, especially Fight Club and Panic Room, where it's kind of like he goes crazy with a lot of camera angles while still making them look beautiful, and just kind of the way he uses CG for normal everyday objects to get shots that he couldn't with a table or a chair. The way he goes through tables and chairs and that kind of stuff is just really fascinating. Um, but then I feel like when he got to The Social Network, he kind of realized that he can shoot anything he wants and he can throw up these visuals on the screen for anything he really wants. But when he really what he really wants to do is kind of test his limits and see, okay, can I make a conversation really interesting? Can I make a movie like Social Network where it's all about the making of the starting up of Facebook, and you have the people who are kind of screwing each other over and all that kind of stuff. And a good chunk of the movie is people sitting down at a table, just like talking with each other back and forth. Can he make a movie like that visual interesting? And if anybody can do that, David Fincher can. He makes those movies really engaging just from the way he sets up shots between two people sitting at a table talking to each other. A group of people, how do you cut between the two? Or how do you cut between 10 people at a table, something like that. And he moves on with that to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which is, again, very kind of simple in the setups with the conversations and everything. And then Gone Girl does the same sort of thing. So his earlier movies are heavy on the style, very very focused on the visual elements, whereas the later films are focused on taking stories about people and characters in these situations talking with each other. And can he make that really visually engaging? And I think he can. I mean, David Fincher shoots the hell out of a conversation between two people. I've never seen anybody else do anything like that before.
I'm gonna agree and I'm gonna disagree with you. with you. I do think that there's a huge shift in the movies he's been doing. Not since Social Network. I'll actually take it back to Zodiac, because there was he made Panic Room, and Panic Room is a very stylized movie. Like you're going through the keyholes and the cracks in the walls and whatever. And then he doesn't make a movie for 5 years, and then he comes back with Zodiac. And Zodiac is a very unconventional movie too, especially because it's based on a true story that has no ending officially yet. So he's dealing with okay, how do you make a movie about a serial killer, but it's not really about a serial killer. And it's also interesting because that's also the first time he's shooting on digital. And I feel like ever since he started shooting on digital, he's become even more precise and more locked down. And I think he has more control of the frame, so he doesn't feel the need to move around so much, because now he can set up a shot and he can do everything he wants to in that one frame, as opposed to, all right, we're going to take you over here so we don't have to focus on maybe this or that. And then kind of where I'm going to disagree with you is kind of agree, kind of disagree, but it was kind of on the style versus substance thing. And I think the two movies I'll contrast this with are Seven and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because those are probably his two darkest movies. But there's a reason why I would prefer to watch Seven than The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because Seven, even though it features some of the most disturbing images I've ever seen, and it's kind of the way I describe it is for a lot of people, it's a movie where halfway through you want to throw it in the trash can, but then you immediately take it out so you can finish it, because you're so engrossed by it. But that's a movie where, to me anyway, the displays of evil and the grotesque stuff all has a purpose. That whole movie is basically a meditation on the nature of evil. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, for me, feels like he's just going through the motions and just kind of this rape scene has to happen just because it has to happen so that she can get revenge on this guy and whatever. To me, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the reason that one fails is because it just feels like it's violence for the sake of violence a lot of times in that movie, and it might be the same thing with the Swedish version of the movie and the book it's based on. I don't know, but I think so that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. Is I think whenever he actually has an intent behind it, when actually he has something that he's really passionate about, that's when it shines through, no matter how grotesque or how stylized the movie may be.
Oh yeah, I agree with you there. I'm not saying that he has more substance in his more recent films. I just think he's putting more focus on the substance in the movies, whether or not there is any in there. Whereas before, and like again with a movie like Seven, honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Seven, but I liked a lot of things about it, and I do think in that one he does do a good balance of kind of like giving meaning to the grotesque violence and that kind of stuff, while still holding up this really cool style essentially. Whereas in some of his later
Yeah,
movies,
yeah.
he he knows he can shoot anything, so he decides to shoot conversations and kind of more heavy dialogue driven movies, whether or not they
Okay, I'm gonna try to sum up your opinion, and I'll base it. So basically, I think this is what you're saying, is that there's so much style in his early movies, it's easy to just look at it on a surface level, but on his newer movies, it's easier to see it for what it actually is. Would that be
exactly
accurate?
exactly
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So and again
All right.
like in movies like Girl with Dragon Tattoo and even Gone Girl, which we'll get to, like one of the problems with Girl with Dragon Tattoo is that you feel like he has to throw in kind of the shock scene just because he has to have it in there, and it has to be like he has to have a scene that everybody remembers walking out of the theater. So,
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, should we let's get into film news.
alrighty, what we got?
So this week we actually had a ton of really cool and awesome trailers drop. Is there anyone you want to talk about first? I feel like I'm leaning towards Inherent Vice. Do you want to talk about Inherent Vice?
Why not? That it's just so much fun.
Yeah. Okay. So if you if you listen to our podcast, which has not been released yet, which we recorded like 2 weeks ago,
Something like
about
that.
our fall suggestions, I was really, if you can check this when it comes out, I was really into Inherent Vice. I was excited for it, even though the trailer hadn't come out yet. Joe was very like, all right, well, we'll just wait and see what it is. And I'm so glad that it seems like you're now on the boat for this one, because to me, just kind of when it was first announced, and I got a very, Big Lebowski meets The Long Goodbye vibe. And watching the trailer, that immediately became evident again. And it's like you said, like it looks super fun. It's got a great cast. It's Paul Thomas Anderson, so I'm sure there's more to it than just what they're letting us, see in the trailer. I mean, this is the guy who made There Will Be Blood and The Master, after all. But it would be. I have a feeling this will be more Boogie Nights than The Master.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that before I didn't know really anything about Inherent Vice. I had no knowledge of the book. I didn't know anything about the what kind of style they were going for. So when I saw the trailer, I just realized, oh, this is a much different movie than The Master and There Will Be Blood. I was like, okay, this is kind of lighter, funnier. A lot of it, at least from the trailer, I'm getting a lot of the humor is from the performances also, just kind of like the little things they make up on set, like that one shot with Joaquin Phoenix gets hit over the head, he just kind of turns around, tries to punch in at the air before he falls over, like stuff like that. I feel like a lot of the humor is going to come from the performances and the little
Yeah, I read there was. Yeah, there was a I think it was a New York Times article this week where they were interviewing Paul Thomas Anderson, and he talked about how for comedy references he went to like Airplane, or like
yeah
Police Academy, like those movies. And you can kind of tell that like there's a lot of pratfalls in the trailer, and yet it doesn't look like it's kind of weird movies like this, because I feel like some people like don't know how to handle them. Like it's the same thing with like Coen Brothers movies, where like, oh, this is a comedy, but not like.
yeah
I'm sure there will be violence. There will be like,
blood.
it's yeah, there will be blood. Like it's weird to refer to this as like a serious comedy, but like I feel like this is, just looking at it, this is different from an Anchorman or a Ted, or
Oh yeah.
something like that. But it's I don't know. It's just it's a very it looks like a very strange, unique, hilarious movie, and I'm very interested to see how much it actually delivers on that, and what else they have for us in store. It's also a brilliantly cut trailer. I think it's kind of unconventional when you look at it, just the structure of the trailer. but whoever put that together, I don't know if Paul Thomas Anderson edited it together or if the studio got someone to. And that's the weird thing too, is this is a studio picture. This is a Warner Brothers release, which like you don't expect, which maybe means this movie is actually more commercial than I'm anticipating. Like just kind of when you say, oh, it's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, you kind of expect it's going to be put through one of the smaller independent companies. But the fact that it's a full blown Warner Brothers movie is is a nice surprise.
Yeah, I'm getting the feelings that this is going to be Paul Thomas Anderson's Doctor Strangelove.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting.
By the way, speaking of Inherent Vice, I'm starting to get a very strong sense of deja vu from last year because we got big outer space spectacle movie Gravity last year. We're getting Interstellar coming up this year. You got the 70s comedy American Hustle last year. We're getting Inherent Vice this year.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's funny. I didn't even think about that.
So
I didn't even think about that.
It'll be interesting to see what else we get this year at the box office, or at the Academy Awards this year. It's just like the same lineup of movies. You just compare them to each other. Oh look!
Yeah, and I mean, and
Argo too. So.
All right.
Anyway.
So, yeah. So I think we can safely say we are both super excited for Inherent Vice. I actually thinking on it, I think it may have been at the beginning of the year. I think it was on at the very top of my most anticipated list. And if we're looking at all the movies coming out from here on out, if I had the chance to see one of them today, I think that would be the one I would gravitate towards the most, even over Interstellar, over The Hobbit. Just because, every once in a while, like Interstellar might be a better movie than Inherent Vice. I mean, that's entirely possible. But Inherent Vice feels more like it was a movie made for me,
right.
If that makes any sense. So.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, what trailer do you want to talk about next? We got a couple here.
I guess we'll talk about Take Thrin. Take Thrin?
Oh my gosh, this trailer is so terrible.
No one gets taken.
But
someone just gets shot.
Well, his wife does get taken. Her life gets taken. So
he's Richard Kimball.
So the biggest problem with this trailer, which kind of makes it even better, is that it takes itself so seriously. Like it acts like it's the dramatic final conclusion in some epic saga, and it plays this really dramatic music. And yet, I just I had the trailer in front of Gone Girl today, and I just could not stop laughing in the theater. Like it's just, I don't know what it is. Like I love Liam Neeson as an actor, but something about him in these movies, his performance is so wooden and so ridiculous. Like I don't see how it's not laughable, and the fact that they're playing this really dramatic music over the whole thing makes it even funnier to me.
I feel like McG should have directed one of the Taken movies at some point. It just him with Liam Neeson. I want to see that happen.
Be careful what you wish for, Joe.
Oh my gosh, I'm wishing so hard right now. Actually, it's funny. I actually haven't seen any of the Taken movies, to be honest. But just from what I know of them, I watched the trailer for this one, and I was like, I can't believe these movies are still being made. Like,
I know.
I
saw the first one.
It isn't. I mean, I didn't see the first one, but it doesn't feel to me like it was meant to be a franchise.
No. So I saw the first one like 6 months after it came out. So when it first hit DVD, and I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was that great, and I totally skipped on Taken 2 because I really didn't care for Taken 1, and then on just hearing how terrible it was. But it's something I love that Liam Neeson can be an action star, but I just wish he would be in better movies. Like The A-Team was fun, The Grey is an awesome movie, but it's just and then apparently Walk Among the Tombstones is good. But I don't know. There's something about these movies where they're all just they're all the same in my head. Unless there's a dramatic scene change, The Grey, the fact that it takes place in Alaska as opposed to just somewhere in Europe or New York City or whatever. That makes it stand out. But all his other movies have just they've all blurred together. I don't know the difference between Unknown and Nonstop and whatever else he has.
Yeah. Well, they should rebox all these Liam Neeson movies into one box set and just call them the Liam Neeson Kicks Ass box set. Just leave it at that.
So much money.
After that, I guess we'll go to the one that I've seen most recently. I actually just watched this trailer like right before Nick and I started recording this podcast. It's American Sniper, directed
This
by
is
Clint Eastwood.
yeah, Clint Eastwood. Yeah, was surprising too because Clint Eastwood just had Jersey Boys come out like 2 months ago.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
fact that he has another movie coming out at the end of the year is pretty impressive for a man his age.
yeah. And American Sniper is a sequel to Jersey Boys.
No, that would have. I'm trying to think if that would have made Jersey Boys better or if it would make American Sniper worse. But I don't.
The little boy in the trailer, he's like the grandson of one of the Jersey Boys.
The little boy in the Middle East is the son of one of the Italian
The
Jersey
little boy
Boys.
with the rocket launcher.
But yeah, so the thing I love about this trailer is it's basically just a scene from the movie for the most part.
Yeah,
Like there's nothing like this is based on a true story about the most lethal sniper in U.S. history. I won't spoil it, even though it's based on a true story, but it doesn't really end good. But it only really gives us, like a sliver of this guy's life and career. And so I'm really intrigued by it. It was originally a Spielberg project. He, obviously didn't direct it. And it's a passion project for Bradley Cooper. So I'm definitely way more interested in it now than I was yesterday before the trailer came out.
yeah, same here. I'm thinking we should probably pick one more piece of news because we've been talking on a while about this. I'm anxious to get on to Gone Girl, so I'll let you choose just the last either the trailer or a bit of news for us to talk about here.
Um, let's we can talk real quick about the I Am Legend reboot, which
Okay.
I think is just kind of interesting. Actually, like the news in and of itself isn't interesting to me. That they're rebooting I Am Legends, kind of like what's tucked away in there. So they've been trying to make like a prequel or a sequel. What's
So
that?
so many times do we get an I Am Legend movie?
Yeah, yeah. So like originally they kept trying to do like a sequel or a prequel, but it was really hard because I keep forgetting because like the movie has two endings. But did Will Smith die in the theatrical version?
He did, yes.
Okay, so
Spoiler.
that kind of made a sequel. Yeah, that kind of made a sequel impossible. But they tried to do a prequel, and then Will Smith decided he wasn't going to be a sequel guy anymore. Um, so I guess what they did is some guy wrote a script that was not related to I Am Legend, but then they looked at it and were like, oh, this actually has some similarities. And then they basically told the guy, hey, rewrite it so it can work as like an I Am Legend reboot. And the way it's being described, and this is kind of what piqued my interest, is that it's being described as the searchers with zombies or vampires or whatever was in I Am Legend. So that like right there makes it way more interesting to me.
So Will Smith is a hardened racist against vampire zombie people, and
Yes,
daughter becomes one of them.
basically,
Or not
probably.
daughter, his whatever. The niece. Oh my
But
gosh.
yeah,
Searches is such a good movie. We have to talk about that sometime when Paul's here.
yep, because Paul loves that movie
He loves it so much.
so much. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. One, the situation of I always think it's interesting when sequels to movies are repurposed from original scripts
Yeah.
because sometimes it makes them better. Like Die Hard with a Vengeance was just a script called Simon Says, and then they read it and were like, hey, we want to do another sequel to Die Hard. Let's just substitute the main character for John McClane, and it makes it an infinitely better movie because it wasn't originally meant to be a Die Hard script. So it doesn't like fall into the trap of like, oh, a sequel repeats everything from the previous movie. Like it feels like it keeps the character intact, but it doesn't like repeat the same story.
Yeah.
Um, so so to me, it sounds like they're going for a more interesting angle as opposed to like, it feels more interesting that like they stumbled onto an idea as opposed to like they all sat in a room and brainstormed an idea of how to reboot this franchise. They, something showed up on their desk and they're like, oh, hey, this actually might work.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
So it'll be interesting. I'm really curious about where they go with this. Obviously, I'll be release more info, but I'm just really into that kind of sci-fi. The I Am
yeah,
Legend, I Am Omega sort of stuff. The post-apocalyptic world with a man, out by himself. So yeah, I'll be following this one. So,
yeah.
Alrighty.
All
Anyway,
right.
ready
So
to move
should
on?
we talk about Gone Girl?
Yes. I'm really curious to hear what you thought of
Yep.
it
Let's
because
do
I
it.
haven't heard your opinion of it yet. I think you just watched it today, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. I just saw it today. So for those of you who don't know, Gone Girl is directed by David Fincher and is based on a book by, is it Gillian Flynn, I believe.
Something like
I
that.
have not read the book. Did you read the book, Joe?
Nope, I knew nothing about the book either
No.
going into this.
So if you read the book and are listening to us and think we're talking crazy, that's obviously why, because we didn't read the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's interesting because today briefly I did talk with someone who has read the book and he has some really interesting things to say about it, comparing it, especially with how they ended it. So I'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, so this is a movie I feel like we'll have a much bigger spoiler section than we will a general section, but I think there's still a way to talk about the movie without giving away spoilers. But I surprisingly enjoyed the movie, um, a lot, but in a very weird way because this movie, if you're just going off the trailers, obviously if you read the book, you kind of know what to expect. And from what I've heard, the book and the movie aren't that different. If they are, feel free to enlighten us. Um, so I was kind of going to this expecting it to be just a basic missing person. Did this guy actually kill his wife or not? Um, and that's pretty much what all the trailers have advertised. But like halfway through the movie, stuff changes big time, and we'll get into that later. But it took me a little bit to wrap my head around it, and I basically came to the conclusion that this isn't so much a David Fincher movie as it is a David Fincher making a Hitchcock dash Brian De Palma dash Paul Verhoeven movie. um, because the second half of this movie kind of gets I'm trying to think of like the right word. Um, you described it as like a trashy movie,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and I would agree with that. But I would say it's I would agree and say it's very well made trash,
yeah, yeah,
if that
exactly.
makes any sense.
Well, it's kind of like going into the movie. I actually bumped into someone I knew who had seen the movie before, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, what do you think of the movie, by the way?" And he kind of stopped for a second and he thought, and then he said, "It's very well made trash." Is exactly what he said. um,
Yeah,
Coming
and
out, I entirely agree with that. Actually,
yeah, and it's something that like if you were to like tell me like, oh, you're going to see like a trash movie or whatever, I would kind of be like, oh, like I don't really want to see a movie if that's what it is. But I never really realized like how awesome these types of movies could be if you actually have good people involved in making it. Like we get so many of these types of movies in the year, but I barely go to see them because they blatantly advertise it in the trailer, and it looks terrible and it stars terrible people, and it's and it's just made by people who are trying to make a quick buck at the box office. Um, but the difference with this is one, obviously any movie that's made by David Fincher is going to be a level above it. And obviously, if you cast the right people and direct them in the right way, you're going to get better performances than you would in that type of movie. But it also helps that I feel like this movie is actually kind of about it's about a lot of different things. And I'm not entirely sure if I've processed it all. I mean, I think it's an interesting satire in the media on marriage, and just and not even so much specifically on marriage, but just almost in terms of just like relationships and how well you know people, and the lies we tell and the lives we live, the lies that we live, and stuff like that. So for me, it was a really fascinating movie to watch, and I think it really benefits going in not knowing exactly what kind of movie it is, because as soon as we kind of got to that halfway mark and things changed up and kind of kept changing up as they went along, like I had no idea when the movie was going to end or how things were going to wind up. So in that regard, I think the movie completely succeeded and kept me entertained and on my feet and guessing and trying to figure out what was going on. I don't know how long the movie will last with me, like how long I'll be thinking about it, but I'm definitely excited to be talking about it now. So as far as I'm concerned, the movie's done its job.
well, there's one scene in particular I know I'll be thinking about for years to come. I won't be able to get that out of my head. um, um, the I initially had very mixed feelings about this movie, and I remember watching it. I was really enjoying it for probably the first half of the movie because it is really well made. You don't know where the movie's going. It twists and turns, and it gives you different perspectives of these characters, and it's really interesting, really well made, perfectly casted. Then about then about probably 2/3 into the movie, though, I hit a certain point. And I remember just like sitting there in the theater because it had me gripped up until that point. And at one point, at one point, I just kind of spaced out, and I was just like, I just want this to wrap up already. I just want to see the conclusion because I felt like at that point, because the movie kind of turns into like three different movies at you know, throughout its course. Like first you think it's a murder mystery. Did he kill his wife or didn't he? And then about halfway through, it turns into an entirely different kind of movie, and you don't care about that anymore. You care about these other things that are going
Yeah,
on.
and it's funny that you say like three different movies, and like it cuts between like three different movies, and like obviously like without giving anything away yet, but like when you're focused, there are like three different storylines at one point, or two or whatever, and when you're jumping between them, it's like a completely different movie in each one, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? But
Yeah,
it's so, I don't know, it's just so, it's like what I was talking about earlier when you can tell. Like Fincher to me really works when you can tell he's having fun and you can almost imagine him laughing behind the camera. And I totally, especially in that second half, can imagine him just losing it behind the camera. You
yeah,
know, and that's why like especially coming off Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, it's like this is what that movie was lacking. Like this movie, you know, even though it presents itself as like a really dark movie, it's still really dark, but it has a really great sense of humor in it. Like there were a lot of moments where whether it was a scene that was played for laughs or it's a scene that's not explicitly about laughs but still elicits laughter from you. It's really well done on that front. Like, and it was great too. I don't know how big like your audience was that you saw it with, but I had a lot of vocal people in my audience, which sometimes can be bad. But in a movie like this, I actually think it helps the experience when you get people who like something will happen and then they'll be like, "Oh no, they didn't," or like, "Oh my gosh," or something like that. And this is kind of like that. This is kind of like the perfect type of movie to see with an audience that is very reactive, I think.
yeah,
And kind of in a similar way, but different to how Tusk was last
right,
week.
yeah,
It's like both these movies, both Tusk and this. I never thought I would compare a Fincher movie and a Kevin Smith movie, but both these movies have a certain level of WTF to them where like something will happen, like in Tusk it's different because it's how far they go with a concept that you know is going to happen. But with Gone Girl, it's more of like of how things change, and things just keep changing, and it's just like what is going on, what is going on, what is going on, and so yeah, I recommend seeing this movie with the biggest audience possible because you're bound to get some really good reactions out of it.
no, yeah, definitely, and it's funny actually because I was probably in about there was a crowd in the theater. It's not like it was super full or anything though, but the my audience was surprisingly very quiet during the whole movie until the very end.
Really?
As the end credits rolled, one person just stood up and he said, "That's the most retarded thing I've ever seen," which was fun, which is funny because
Yeah, there were a couple of people.
which is funny because up until that point I hadn't heard like any reaction from anybody in the theater, and then just like these crowd people just like got up and like left and they like all kind of like grumbling to themselves and that kind of stuff.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Something I want to touch on before we get into spoilers, and again, this is something that we'll have to expand upon when we get into spoilers, but this movie has some really good performances in it, especially from a couple of people you don't expect. Like, obviously, Ben Affleck is really good. Rosamund Pike is really, really good in this movie, but we can't say why yet. And we'll go into it later because her character in particular is just I'm pretty sure our whole spoiler discussion will be around her character.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then, but two people I really enjoyed seeing in the movie. The first one was, I think her name's Carrie Coon, and she played Ben Affleck's twin sister. And she's not an actress that I think she's just on TV. I guess she's on The Leftovers, which I haven't watched yet. But she's really good. I think she brings much needed level of like reasonability and like down to earth relatability compared to all the other characters. Because there's a certain point where like even though Ben Affleck is played as like a lovable guy, he's the person who's caught up in this media extravaganza. Like he's not in a normal situation. And even though she, by proximity, isn't in a normal situation either, she's removed enough that her performance really helps ground the movie when it gets into kind of these crazy, slightly over-the-top situations towards the second half.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, like, one of the greatest things about the performances in this movie is that when I first heard about the cast, I was like, that is one of the most unusual casts I've heard of in a long time. You got Ben Affleck, and you got Tyler Perry, you got Rosamund Pike, you got Neil Patrick Harris, and all those people in it. But like when you see them in the movie, David Fincher really plays to their strengths. I mean, like you can see why these people were cast as the characters because it's just that's the way they seem to naturally act in front of the camera.
Tyler Perry in particular is really good in this movie as kind of a hotshot lawyer.
He is. And then even Neil Patrick Harris, the very first scene where they showed him in, like the scene didn't seem like it was played for laughs, but everything he said was funny just because he's saying it in a very Neil Patrick Harris way. And I think that's where Fincher was trying to get the comedy out of in that scene.
Yeah, I think it was like it's one of those movies where I think you could watch it and think like, oh, this is funny because it's Neil Patrick Harris, and think it was unintentional, and think like, oh, it was like a bad, like they shouldn't have cast him in that role. But I think it was entirely intentional. Like I think that's the whole reason why Fincher cast him in that part, is because he wanted to get those type of reactions from people.
Yeah, exactly. Which is absolutely great. Again, like the cast in this movie is just perfect for the roles they're playing. Without getting into spoilers, my main issues with the movie was that. I mentioned earlier that someone said, and I agree, that the film is basically well-made trash. But even going beyond that, it feels like a kind of a dime store exposition, or like a dime store novel, the kind that you pick up and has like a lot of smut and and sex and violence and that kind of stuff in it, and it just has that stuff just for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it has a somewhat interesting story, and it is done by a filmmaker who knows what he's doing. And even the script itself, like some of the things people would say, like at the bar, his sister said something, said something along the lines of, I'm going to give you another Grand Tale by the Margot, whatever her name was, And a lot of that dialogue just felt to me is like this is something just straight out of a smutty novel. But it's confusing me because it is shot like a really well-made thriller, which I think was my overall problem.
Yeah, and I think
is that when the film finished, I felt like the movie tricked me into thinking it was about something, but in reality, it was just kind of trash for the sake of trash, and it wasn't really about it. But it tricks you into thinking it is.
But I think I'm going to agree and I'm going to disagree with you on that, because I do think it is about things, but I think it played like it's. I had this in my head earlier, and I'm going to try to explain it better. But it's one of those things where like I think there is something there, and I think that's the whole reason why they kind of play it up in a big way, is to kind of make you take notice of it. This isn't like there are movies that have messages and themes, and they play them subtly so you can pick them up. Like you have to like do the work. This movie, you still have to do the work for it, but I think like it has like a melodramatic quality to it that like you can't help but notice it, And so yeah, kind of like the subtext is the text of the movie, but I think there's enough. I guess what I'm saying is what the movie is about is pretty like there on its sleeve, but I think it'll inspire a lot of people to have post conversations about about those subjects, as opposed to what the movie's about. It'll inspire people to talk about that bigger conversation, as opposed to like what the movie focuses on, if that makes any sense.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like, to me, it's going to inspire the kind of conversations among a lot of people who go into it, they come out and they say like, "Oh, okay, wasn't that a really interesting movie?" But the problem with me is that for a lot of movies, I can come out with an opinion of what I think the overall thesis of the movie is. Like for instance, a film like Place Beyond the Pines, I can tell you right off the bat. I've seen the movie like probably 3 or 4 times, and the first time I watched it, with a film like this, I'm coming out of it and I'm like, I know they said some things about marriage in there, about marriage being hard work or something like that. They said some things about telling the truth. Um, but in the end, I don't know what I can't tell you what the movie's about as a whole.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess it's about something in the way that like a Hitchcock movie was about something, you know? Like, like it's funny, like we always hold the Hitchcock movies up in such high esteem, and rightly so. But at the same time, there was depending on the movie, there was still a level of smitiness to some of those too. It was just done in a time period where you had to be really clever and hidden about that. And this is a movie that's I think on that level, but because it can show certain things and say certain things, it does.
Yeah. Well, I guess the easiest film to compare this to would be Psycho, where essentially Alfred Hitchcock took a trashy novel and he turned it into a horror thriller. Where I think Hitchcock succeeds, where Fincher doesn't, is that maybe it's because Hitchcock was restricted in some way, but he like Fincher, he knows where to put the camera to draw your attention. He knows how to catch your eye. He knows how to make you flinch and that kind of stuff, and he had fun with it. But he never felt exploitative, and I felt like even though he shot distasteful things, he shot them with a certain amount of restraint and taste. Maybe that was just because of the times of what he was allowed to show. Maybe it was just because he knew how much to show. Whereas with Fincher, I feel like there's a couple things that he does that kind of turn me off to him, and one of them is that um, he has no restraint, and when he wants to show you something shocking, he's going to show you something shocking and like go all out with it, and you feel like if you use a little more restraint, it probably could have been better. Which I'll mention another scene later on. It's not the big shocking scene, but there's another scene where I think he used that really really well. But then another thing is that because this movie, I mean, like Psycho would never try to be anything other than just a horror thriller, a slasher thriller that tries to shock the audience. I feel like Gone Girl is in a way trying to be something more than it is. If it just came right out and said, "This is a trashy movie, let us just tell you the story and get it over with," but because he's trying to make it about something, it makes me think a little bit harder about it than I think I actually should be. If that makes any sense.
But is it pretending to be something more than it is because it actually aspires to be something else, or is it pretending to be something it's not because of, like, for audience members like us who went in expecting one thing, but then, at least for my money's worth, the thrill ride of what I wasn't expecting was probably way more worth than what I thought they would deliver.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the big question of the day, isn't it? I guess. Yeah, I really have no idea. I mean, like in the end, I think because I find the movie to be about nothing, even though it had the potential to be about something, that just bothers me that they put me through all that trash without any reason. And I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it more in the future, and I'll think of something. But as of right now, it just didn't do it for me.
Interesting. So, I think this is a nice spot to get into spoilers now.
I think so. So anyway, from here on out,
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah, from here on out, we're gonna talk about spoilers for David Fincher's Gone Girl. So Nick, do you want to tell us about the scene we've been dancing around?
So, there's a point halfway through where okay, wait, I gotta stop Joe. There's There's a weird echo effect, like I'm hearing my audio on your end.
Oh, are you? Okay, hold on a second.
Okay. I think that's better.
Is that better?
I can still hear it, but I don't know. I think there's like a lag between us or whatever.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, sorry about that.
I can still hear myself.
All right, hold on a second. You go ahead and tell us about the scene. I'll leave and come back.
Okay. So basically, the entire first half of the movie, you're led to believe that Ben Affleck's character may or may not have killed his wife. But then it's revealed that Rosamund Pike actually set up Ben Affleck because he's been cheating on her with another woman, and she's gone off to basically escape while he gets set up and framed and gets arrested and possibly put on death row and all that good stuff. So right away, as soon as that happens, it kind of completely throws off what your previous expectations of this movie are. When the first half of the movie kind of sets you up for it to be just a standard missing persons case, like did Ben Affleck do this or not? And it's kind of actually something along the lines of what happened with Tusk last week, where we talked about how they have the walrus reel halfway through the movie as opposed to like closer towards the end. By revealing that Amy, set up her husband halfway through the movie as opposed towards the end, it kind of gives us this entire crazy, over-the-top, off-the-wall adventure of her as she leaves town, runs afoul of a bunch of people in Nebraska, I think it was, gets held up by them, gets desperate, goes back to one of her old ex-lovers, plays him up, winds up getting him killed, and then come back home to Ben Affleck and basically then sets him up to basically be like, hey, I set you up, but you can't leave me. I'm not going to leave you. So basically we're going to both live knowing that we've lied to each other and that we don't love each other anymore, and we're going to keep this facade up in front of everyone. So that entire second half just completely throws you for a loop. It is not at all what I think a lot of people who haven't read the book are going to be expecting going in. And to me, it completely changes the way you have to think about the movie, because initially the way it's set up like a typical missing persons case, but the second half of the movie becomes way more of like a War of the Roses. Actually, this is probably worse than War of the Roses when you think about it. There isn't so much physical violence in this one as there is in War of the Roses, but I think the psychological ramifications are way worse in this than they are in War of the Roses. But yeah, that's kind of a brief overview of the second half. I have no idea if Joe is back having fixed audio.
I think so. How does it sound?
I think it sounds better.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll go with this unless we hear anything else.
Cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it was just weird. Like after a while, I thought there was like a lag, and then all of a sudden I started hearing an echo of my own voice, and it became. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of those things, but there's sometimes they get these little headphone things that you can put on, and you start talking, and then it starts playing back your audio like a half a second after you start talking, and all of a sudden you like lose the ability to speak because you're hearing yourself talking at twice at the same time, and that was basically what I was experiencing. So I was like, okay.
Oh my gosh, you should plan it so that you were having like a conversation with yourself or something like that.
That would have been, oh my gosh,
terrible.
So I just went over the broad strokes of the second half. Totally spoiled it for everyone.
Nick, why'd you do that?
Because we're in spoilers, Joe. That's what we do.
Yeah, I guess why not. Yeah. So I mean, it's those twists throughout the second half that kept the movie interesting. But when the movie ended, I mean, like the fact that there was no conclusion bothered me. I think it bothered me because it felt like the person who wrote the script, the author or whatever, had come up with this really cool idea. Yeah, and I have no idea. I have no idea. This is how it went down. But this is how it just felt based on the ending. That she had this really cool idea, like, oh, okay, what is this murder mystery? But then, the wife's the one who does it, and then you throw in these shocking scenes to kind of grab the audience's attention. But then she had no idea of how to end it, and she's like, well, I don't really need to end it. I'll just keep going on until I come up with all these ideas, and it will just stop the movie.
I mean,
um,
I think the ending basically just exposes the fact that they're both bad people and that they both lied to each other, and now they know their lies, but now they don't love each other anymore, as opposed to when they loved each other but didn't know what the other person was actually doing the whole time.
but nothing changed between them in the last, say, like 15 minutes of the movie. I mean, like he found out, oh, okay, she's pregnant, and I'm in this situation. I need to get out of this situation. All right, how am I going to get out of this situation? And then he
But he's
said,
not. He's stuck. He's screwed.
"What's the thing is that you want to see him try to get out of it because you've seen how he can
But
be
I think like, and I got that sense of it when they started bringing up the possibility of the death penalty, and that was what I thought. Like I thought like there were different points when I thought like she would like get herself killed, and then even if that happened, like he would still wind up on death row, and like no one would win. Like basically, at a certain point in the movie, I figured it would be a no-win situation for anyone. Any like like there was no way it was going to be a happy ending to this movie.
well, I didn't
And
need
so,
a happy ending. I just needed an ending."
well, so like what? Like what would you? I mean, I'm just curious what you would have
Okay,
thought would have been.
I mean, like, I don't know how I would have ended it if it had ended with him getting the death penalty and she got away with it entirely. I would have been okay with that. I mean, like, it's not a happy ending, but I would have been okay with it because it would have been something. With this one, I almost felt like, yeah, he's stuck in this situation, but he didn't strike me as the sort of guy who would give up at that point. And it's kind of like I felt like there was more to the story to tell. I mean, like whether or not he got away with it, whether or not she got away with it. I just want to know, and bringing some sort of closure to the story will kind of give me a feeling that, again, this was all for something. There's a reason for this story to exist, and it's kind of
Again,
ending. It's
Joe.
kind of ending it on that note. Gave it kind of a feeling of everything we've seen up to this point was for no reason. Their situation hasn't changed at all, except for he knows he's a psychopath now, and he can't get out of it, and that's it. It's interesting because talking about this with a guy I know who read the book, he said that apparently in the book, and I don't know, maybe people who have actually read the book can correct me if this isn't true, apparently he has no idea throughout the entire story that she is who she is. And at the end of the movie, they get back together, and he still has no idea. And as far as he's concerned, she's just come back from this terrible situation where she was kidnapped and everything. And it's kind of like the audience or the readers know about it, but he doesn't. So I'm not sure if that's true, but if it is, that makes it even more pointless to me.
Well, that was something that I was thinking about when it happened, because the moment you find out that she's been lying and that she set him up, you spend a lot of time with her on her own. And I was thinking, there's totally another version of this movie where you stick with the Ben Affleck story until 3/4 of the way through, and then you get a very truncated version of what she did when she was gone.
Yeah.
But I kind of like this version where you get to spend all that time with her, because it gives the movie some of its craziest scenes.
Yeah.
But going off that ending, it's funny. I don't know why we keep coming back to Tusk when we're talking about this movie. Well, basically, at the end of the movie, Ben Affleck is stuck in the walrus suit that is his marriage. Because there's no way he's getting out of that thing.
That's amazing.
That should be my new essay, is how Tusk and Gone Girl are the same movie.
That should be a quote on the Blu-ray box for Gone Girl. Ben Affleck is stuck in the walrus suit of his marriage. Talking about so I want to go back to something when we were talking not about spoilers earlier, but I was comparing it to Alfred Hitchcock, and I was saying that I felt like Hitchcock shocked you while at the same time using enough restraint to keep it interesting. And now that we're talking about spoilers, one thing I think Fincher does this really, really well in one scene in particular, but then he totally screws it over in the reverse rape scene, I guess. I don't know.
Oh.
So essentially, when I missed some when you were talking about the second half, Nick, but I'm sure you talked about Neil Patrick Harris, her in Neil Patrick Harris's house, and essentially it's a scene where she knows there's security cameras all around the house, and she wants to make it look like Neil Patrick Harris is keeping her there against her will, and she's being raped essentially. without him suspecting this. So I mean, like there's a scene where she kind of like ruffles him up to make it, so he has to like straighten his clothes out while he's walking out the door, make it look like something shady was going on, and then she essentially frames it so that she's shown in one of the security cameras, but she's like dressed in lingerie and she's screaming for help, and it looks like she's been raped essentially. And the scene, it's shocking because you know what's actually going on and what she's doing here and how she's manipulating everything. It doesn't go far enough that you're disgusted, but at the same time it's gripping enough that you're like, oh my gosh, like this is just crazy. I think he did a good job there of shocking the audience without going too far. Then he goes too far.
With the blood?
Well, no. Then he goes too far in the later scene where he slits his throat while he's having sex on top of her, and there's blood everywhere. That's the shock. That's the shock factor scene that they didn't need. I almost want to see a version of this movie where you see the lead up to that scene, and then then it cuts to her getting out of the car covered in blood, and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened in between that, without actually showing what happened, because at that point the movie really lost me. I'm like, oh, okay, it's with all the stuff we've seen up to this point, and then we've seen this scene. It's just like we didn't need that, but it's in there because it's David Fincher, essentially.
But I kind of I love that moment when she slits his throat though, because there's so much blood. It's so over the top. Like again, it's one of those things where like I think you're supposed to laugh at that. You know?
Oh yeah, I'm sure you are. I think
it eases the tension of the situation. Oh, you just felt bad about it. Well, okay.
I mean, it is a funny scene, but I'm watching the scene and I'm just like, yeah, it's really disgusting. I just kind of feel bad about laughing at this scene, but it's here.
Yeah, that's something we're not talking about though. Really, is that like we've hinted at it, but like Rosamund Pike, her character is like, she's a master manipulator in this movie. Like,
she's terrifying.
I don't think I've ever had such a reaction to like a villainous character. Like, I don't remember the last time I've had a reaction to a character like this. Like, this is a character that genuinely, like, at certain points I was like, Ben Affleck, you need to just like you didn't kill her before, but you need to like deal with her now, because but at the same time, like there's like it's just the character that she plays when she's on the run is so like gleeful, but so like I don't know. It's such a fascinating character that she plays in this movie.
Yeah.
If she doesn't get nominated for something, like that'll be a major crime. Like she I think is the one thing coming out of this movie that deserves a lot of recognition.
Oh yeah, and she's absolutely freaking terrifying at the end of the movie as well.
Yeah.
When she's it feels like she's playing house with Ben Affleck at the end of the movie, and he's just kind of like, yeah, we need to get rid of her. It's this burn it with fire.
Yeah.
I
was almost expecting like that type of ending too, where like all the good characters rally together and they just like burn the house down, or something. Like the end of Carrie when the mom gets killed. Like I was expecting something like that.
Well, see, there again, that would have been an ending. If everyone came together and burned down the house, that would have been an ending. It would have been a kind of crappy ending, but it would have been an ending.
That's interesting.
Neil Patrick Harris also though, like when I first saw him, I was like, he's kind of funny just because he's Neil Patrick Harris, but he's also freaking terrifying. And I thought that up until Rosamund Pike showed just how scary she was. Up until that point, I was like, my gosh, Neil Patrick Harris just pulls out the creeper from inside him.
I know, he's like there's the one part he's like, oh, but I'm not going to rape you. And it's like, dude, you shouldn't have said that. Like, just the fact that you felt you need to say that makes you 10 times more creepier.
He was absolutely perfect in this role. My gosh,
he was. Although there is the weird thing of seeing a known gay man like that playing a character who's obsessed with a woman the way he is. But I mean, then again, like there is this character on How I Met Your Mother, so it's just kind of funny that he has an affinity for playing these characters who love their women.
Yeah, it's interesting. So anyway, I guess kind of starting to wrap it up. It's a well-made movie for my part. It's a very well-made movie. I enjoyed a lot of things about it. I couldn't bring myself to justify that it was all worth it in the end, though, just because again, like I felt like there was no conclusion, and I felt like it had some interesting things it started to say, like okay, it's gonna talk about marriage, and if there's anything I got out of it is that marriage is impossible or really difficult, which would be fine, except for just like they didn't come to any conclusion or anything. It's just like okay, I guess women are scary. That's the moral of the movie.
Full disclosure: Joe is a recent newlywed, so you should not take his opinion for anything.
Yeah, I'm terrified of this movie now. I need to not watch it right now.
You should have taken Katie. It should
Oh
have been
yeah,
a date movie.
this movie is the perfect date movie, by the way, guys.
So did this movie give you and Katie any ideas what to do for your 5th anniversary down the road?
Oh yeah, I got plenty of ideas. Punch and Judy dolls.
Punching Judy dolls, man.
That's
Who
that's
wouldn't want them?
that's the way to go. Put on a puppet show for the kids.
By the way, that moment when Ben Affleck gets the Punching Judy dolls, I thought something worse was going to be in that present. It was funny because his sister asked the question, "What's in the present?" And I was like, "You should have just said what's in the box. Let's just get that meta moment out of the way." But
We know exactly what's in the box.
it was funny because I thought something like really terrifying was going to be in the box, and then it was something even more terrifying because it was a Punching Judy doll that was the scariest thing I've ever seen. I would have rather preferred Gwyneth Paltrow's head was in that box than the Punching Judy doll that actually was.
That scene was directed by James Wan.
Oh my gosh, that was terrifying.
So
But yeah, I would I guess kind of to some of my thoughts, I would if the movie sounds like something that interests you, I would recommend it. I kind of agree and kind of disagree with Joe. I think the movie, the second half, is really worth it because it kind of takes you on a roller coaster, and if you're willing to go with all its crazy off the wall moments, I think you'll enjoy it.
all right, and there you have it. Two similar but different opinions of
Yes.
Girl. Coming up next week. Do we have anything coming out next week? I don't even
I
know.
don't know what is coming out next week.
I
Did you see Annabelle yet?
I haven't seen Annabelle yet. I'm planning on going to go see it early next week, though, after the weekend rush is over. I'm going to see that. I'm going to watch Left Behind. Looking forward to seeing that one just for Nicolas Caginess of it. And actually, you know what? If there is nothing coming out next week, maybe it would be a good time to release our fall preview.
We'll see. Yeah.
Which I think we talked about a couple of these. I think we talked about Annabelle on that one, but. Anyway, yeah, so that's it for this week. Next week we'll have another one coming up. You can find us on our multiple social media things, which I'm sure we'll link to in this video, and just go to the-letterbox.com for more articles. We have more coming up this week. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Wait, I'm looking to see if there's anything actually coming out next week.
And?
Kill the Messenger. Oh, Dracula Untold.
Oh, there we go. Dracula Untold is okay. It's Dracula Untold. It's the first. So coming out next week is the first 10 minutes of Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Basically.
It's all the cut together.
We should review that for an hour.
Review the first 10 minutes of Dracula.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing. Talk about wow, yeah, it's another terrible idea. Anyway.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Take it easy.